This is deferred action for childhood arrivals. What is deferred action anyway? It's a presentation by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and my name is Lourdes Martinez. Deferred action for childhood arrivals, otherwise known as DACA, is a program that was announced by the federal government on June 15th of this year to stop the deportation of qualifying undocumented immigrant youth. However, many people are not familiar with what deferred action is, and therefore this brief webinar is intended to answer questions like, what does this mean? Will it grant me legal immigration status? How does it do this? Is this the DREAM Act? And can I apply for citizenship down the road? Therefore, we will not cover the qualifying criteria or the application process. We'll simply explain what deferred action is. So many of you heard that on June 15th, the Department of Homeland Security came out with a new policy explaining how it will enforce the nation's immigration laws against certain young people who were brought to this country as children and know only this country as home. This is referring, therefore, to immigrant youth who are currently out of status. They are unlawfully present in the United States because they were either brought to the United States unlawfully or have overstayed their status. Just to point out that the memo is issued by Janet Napolitano, who is the Secretary of Homeland Security. That is, she is the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and I will explain in a minute what all that means. At the end of the memo, there's a very important paragraph to understand what deferred action is. Secretary Napolitano explains that this memo confers no substantive rights, immigration status, or pathway to citizenship. Only Congress, acting through its legislative authority, can confer these rights. So what this means, what Secretary Napolitano is referring to, will become clear if we go back to civics class. You'll remember that the U.S. Congress has the power to make laws. And legislative bills that are presented to Congress, or legislative proposals called bills, have to be approved by Congress before they go to the executive to be signed into law. The DREAM Act is such a bill. The president then has the power to either sign these bills into law or to veto them. But in the case of the DREAM Act, this bill has never gone to the president because it has never been approved in Congress. So the DREAM Act is a bill that has never passed, and therefore we don't have it. The president, however, is also responsible for enforcing the law and thus for designing policy to direct this enforcement. And that's where the Department of Homeland Security comes in. The Department of Homeland Security, otherwise known as DHS, is comprised of the Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and Customs and Border Patrol, CBP. These three agencies are responsible together for the administration and the enforcement of the immigration laws of the United States. The Department of Homeland Security is therefore a department overseen by the executive of the federal government, and the head of the Department of Homeland Security is Secretary Janet Napolitano. The laws around deportation are therefore administered and executed by the Department of Homeland Security. And that takes us to Secretary Napolitano's memo, which basically says, under the authority that the Department of Homeland Security has to enforce the laws that are already in place, the Department of Homeland Security goes ahead and lays out a procedure to enforce these laws. So because the DREAM Act has not passed and comprehensive immigration reform has not passed, the current laws say that almost 2 million undocumented youth in the United States are deportable. They are not lawfully present in the United States, and the Department of Homeland Security is responsible for administering their deportation. The Napolitano memo says, since the Department of Homeland Security has this responsibility, we are laying out a process for how to decide whether or not we deport somebody. So deferred action is DHS agreeing to put on hold the deportation of an individual, otherwise called as removal, known as removal, who is otherwise unlawfully present in the U.S. That is, the deportation of an individual that is otherwise deportable. And DHS does this by not placing him or her in removal proceedings. For people who are not in immigration court currently, DHS will not place them in immigration court if they are granted DACA, or by not executing an order of removal that was already issued by an immigration court in the past. And that is how DHS halts the deportation of somebody who is a DACA recipient. This is a discretionary decision, which means that DHS can deny DACA to anyone, even those who seem to qualify. Therefore, applicants will not only need to qualify, but they will also need to show that they warrant a grant of this benefit. What deferred action is not. It is not an executive order. Even though it comes from the executive branch, it is not an order issued by the president, known as an executive order. Executive orders have the force of law. They are equivalent to a law passed by Congress. But this is not that. This is simply an administrative policy issued by the Department of Homeland Security. It is not lawful immigration status. That is more of a technical term of art that can be a little difficult to understand. But saying that DACA is not an immigration status, it's saying that it is not like being in the United States as a visitor on a visitor's visa or as a student on a student visa. DACA is not immigration status. It's simply the Department of Homeland Security choosing not to exercise its authority to deport someone that it could otherwise deport. It's not a pathway to permanent lawful status or citizenship. What are the benefits of DACA, therefore? First of all, what we've talked about, deportation or removal will be deferred, and the individual with an approved DACA application will not be deported as long as the DACA is valid. And we said that would be for 2-year periods. Individuals who receive DACA will also be applying for employment authorization documents simultaneously with the DACA application, and so they will receive authorization to work lawfully in the U.S., and they can therefore go ahead and apply for any employment in the U.S. other than government jobs reserved for U.S. citizens. This is particularly helpful for individuals who would otherwise not qualify for a job or not be able to obtain a job. Now they'll be able to they'll be open to apply for any job. State driver's licenses are issued by each state, so you would need to check with the local Department of Motor Vehicles. But in California, we expect that the state will be issuing state driver's licenses to individuals with approved DACA requests, while Arizona has already said that they will not do so. As far as travel goes, for travel inside the country, there is no requirement of any particular immigration benefit or status. So this refers to travel outside the United States, because when one travels outside the United States, you need to prove that you have some way to get back into the country in order to be allowed to re-enter lawfully. So the Department of Homeland Security will be issuing special permits known as advance parole to applicants who file the application for an advance parole. So this will not be a permit that will be issued with an approved DACA. It will be a separate document that somebody will have to request. And the Department of Homeland Security has said that they will issue these documents to individuals who can show that they want to travel abroad and they have reasons to do so. However, we are advising that individuals who wish to travel check with immigration experts before making plans, because travel abroad can be risky and it may not be advisable in the case of many DACA recipients, even if it is allowed by the regulations. And finally, you will stop accumulating unlawful presence in the U.S. Unlawful presence, again, is one of those terms of art. It's a technical term, and it's a little tricky to understand. But for purposes of this brief explanation, we just want you to know that this is important for those who are 18 or under when they apply for DACA, and those individuals should therefore apply as soon as possible so that they will not accumulate unlawful presence in the United States. What this means is that individuals with DACA should be careful to remain eligible to reapply once DACA expires after the 2 years, or remain eligible for any other immigration benefit in the future. And the way to ensure this is to keep your criminal record clean, graduate or stay in school if school is going to last longer than the next 2 years, do not travel without authorization, and stay in continuous DACA status, that is, renew your status when it expires, so that you do not accumulate unlawful presence. Finally, it is important to continue to push for the DREAM Act, which will bring with it, or it would bring with it, an avenue for permanent lawful immigration status and eventually citizenship, or other comprehensive immigration reform. So it's important to keep up those efforts. If you'd like more information on how to qualify or on the application procedure, you can go to these web pages on the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services website. You can download the form and look at all the requirements. And you can also obtain additional resources at our website at ILRC.org. The URL appears on the screen. We have several resources involving regarding the DACA criminal bars. Or you can go to the Own the Dream website, also appearing on your screen. Thank you very much. This has been a presentation by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. ILRC is committed to strengthening leaders and communities, advocating for fairness to immigration immigrants, and educating and providing expertise in immigration law. Thank you.